How's it going? I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. In this video, I have just one question for you, and it's a genuine question. And the question is, how fully committed are you to what you want? In psychology, there's a framework that all motivation is either approach motivated or avoid motivated. If you're approach motivated, you're going fully for what you want, you're fully committed. And this is a spectrum, by the way. Avoid motivation means you're avoiding hard truths. You're avoiding your past self, meaning you're avoiding dealing with traumas or situations in the past. You're avoiding your past, and you're also avoiding your future. So this is a spectrum, full approach and full avoid. And it's also kind of like a bell curve. Most people are somewhere in the middle where they're basically just drifting through life. They're not fully committed, and they're also they're just kind of just going through the motions. Once you get to the full side, once you get to this full side of full commitment, full action. Hey, Dr. Benjamin Hardy here, author of Be Your Future Self. Now, a quick interruption to your YouTube video to invite you to go to futureself.com so that you can immediately download the one-page Future Self cheat sheet, as well as the full Future Self course and other goodies, all free. That's futureself.com. Now back to your YouTube video. There's a great quote that says, "Nothing happens until you commit." In my PhD program, I studied a concept called point of no return psychology. And what I did was I studied the difference between wannabe entrepreneurs and real entrepreneurs. Wannabe entrepreneurs, in my study, and this was in my thesis, they were people who said that they wanted to be entrepreneurs, but that they hadn't actually started a business. They were still employees. And so I asked both groups, the successful entrepreneurs versus the wannabe entrepreneurs, have you ever had a point of no return experience? I didn't actually define what that meant. I just said, have you ever had a point of no return experience? All of the successful entrepreneurs said yes. I even interviewed successful authors. I interviewed people like Seth Godin. Seth Godin said he has had many point of no return experiences, whereas the wannabe entrepreneurs said that they have never had that experience, but that they look forward to having that experience at some point. The main point here is your identity is that which you're most committed to. That's the scientific definition of identity, is that which you're most committed to. And right now, you have to just fully be honest that your life right now is what you're most committed to. There's a great book on the subject called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And in that book, they say that commitment is a statement of what is. You can know what you're committed to by your results, by looking at your life. We are all committed. We are all producing results. Commitment is not what you say you want or what you want to commit to. Actually, commitment is what you now have. So commitment is the key of all of it. And in order for you to become fully successful, and that's essentially to get to a place of being bulletproof, you need to get to that point of no return psychology where you're fully committed to what you want and you're willing to let go of everything that you now have that's in contradiction to what you want. Now, this is very difficult. It takes what would be considered self-negotiation. So one of my friends, James Dredge, he's studying this in his psychology program. And there's a Harvard psychologist named Robert Kegan. Robert Kegan is a very influential psychologist, and he wrote a book called Immunity to Change. And in that book, he describes a really important aspect of our subconscious. Our subconscious is our past self, by the way. Your subconscious is your past self, and also your physical body is a representation of your past. That's actually what Dr. Joe Dispenza says. Your body is a record of your past. Your body is your subconscious, and your subconscious is your past self. And something that Robert Kegan talks a lot about is that we have what are considered hidden commitments. We have hidden commitments that we formulated in the past, which are now driving our behavior, and our behavior is in direct opposition to the commitment that we want to make. So you may want to lose certain weight or run a marathon, or you may want to really, succeed in certain ways. You might want to be financially successful, start a business, write a book, have an amazing relationship with your kids, whatever it is you're committed to. You have all of these hidden commitments over here that are your past self, which are driving your behavior, which are in direct opposition to your desired commitment. This goes back to my friend James Dredge. Essentially, the idea of self-negotiation is that you have a future self that you want, and you have a past self that is your hidden commitments. The future self is the commitment you want to make. And if you could pass your point of no return and go into full approach mode rather than avoid mode. So you have a future self that you want, and you have a past self that is your hidden commitments and your subconscious. And essentially, self-negotiation is where the future self and the past self come into a negotiation. And the future self obviously has got to win that negotiation. And there's a lot of research on this. All of the research on future self is essentially describing the battle between your present and your future selves. And in most cases, the present and past self win. They win that negotiation every time you do something that creates a short-term dopamine hit. Then the present self is winning and the future self is losing. And in most cases, most people's future self is losing because the present is really powerful and because they're not fully committed to their future self and they're not operating as their future self. And so most people are drifting through life. Most people are avoid-oriented, meaning they're avoiding facing the truth, avoiding looking in the mirror, avoiding fully analyzing and making the unconscious conscious, meaning they're actually looking at their hidden commitments and staring them in the face, and then making a firm commitment and a firm decision and getting to a point of pure purpose. And if you study any forms of psychology, at the end of the day, you look at Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. Basically, what people needed in those dire situations was a purpose. He said, what man needs is not a tensionless state, but the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. What we all need is a future purpose to which we get fully committed to. This doesn't mean that you're not open to new information. It doesn't mean you're not anti-fragile, meaning that you're willing to adjust, iterate, transform. You will adjust, iterate, and transform. But the key is getting to the place, and there's a great model for this called thinking, feeling, knowing. You want to think about it, conceptualize it, think. Whatever you focus on expands, but you want to get to a place of feeling where you get fully convicted and fully committed, but also you have a sense of gratitude, appreciation, acceptance, allowance. You're not resisting emotionally the commitment you want to make. Instead, you're fully accepting and allowing and committing it. In fact, there's a theory in a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy. And so you want to accept, allow, emotionally accept, and also you accept kind of the friction between your present and your future self. This is kind of the negotiation. You deal with that. You get used to that. You get comfortable with that. But you get to a place of thinking, feeling, knowing. And once you get to the place of knowing, there's two great quotes. One is from Dr. Stephen Covey. He said, to know and not do is to really not know. So once you get to a place of knowing that what you want is already yours, then you get into a place where your future self is going to win the negotiation. There's also another great quote from Florence Shin. She said, faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. So the key here is you want to get to a place where you go from thinking to feeling, acceptance, allowance, commitment, conviction to knowing. Knowing that what you want is already yours and then operating as your future self. And this is where you then start to win the negotiation and you start to reach a place of no longer worrying about or caring about the implications. This is a key aspect of reaching that point of no return, is that you're no longer afraid, because the afraidness would be the avoid. Often we don't make the full commitment because we're avoiding the repercussions. A lot of the repercussions are what people think about us. We have a lot of fears of what other people think about us. We have a lot of avoidances of loss. It's actually called prospect theory. We avoid loss for a million different reasons, but the key reasons are we want to be viewed as consistent. We want other people, we really worry about other people's opinions about us. We don't want to let go of things we've invested in. We don't want to risk the past in order to go all in on the future. But once you get to a point, and this is a big part of what courage is about, commitment leads to courage. One of my favorite models on this is Dan Sullivan's 4 C's. He says, first you have to fully commit. Commitment leads to courage, which is the willingness to try something that might not work. It's the willingness to try and fail and iterate and adjust. Commitment then leads to new capabilities and new levels of confidence. And then eventually you normalize your future self, and that's just who you become. And so you've got to be willing to, first off, fully approach your future self and be fully accepting and allowing of all the repercussions of what people will think about you, the repercussions of presenting yourself as your future self and fully owning it, the repercussions of being willing to fail, learn, adjust, iterate. There's a great quote from Naval Ravikant. He said that success and becoming an outlier is not about 10,000 hours, it's about 10,000 iterations. The thing though is that deliberate practice or making those iterations is worthless unless you're fully committed to a specific goal. You can't actually do deliberate practice unless you're fully committed to a goal and toward a specific future self. So you got to clarify your future self, go all in, and then through that commitment, you iterate and adjust and adapt to your goal. And so my question for you, pulling all this together, is when was the last time you were fully committed to something? I've been asking myself this a lot lately. Being fully honest with you, I'm not sure when the last time. I go through phases. Like I might get fully committed to a project. I just barely finished writing a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. I got fully committed to that. I've been fully committed to launching that book really well. So my commitment is often, if I'm just reflecting on myself, directed at certain goals or objectives. But in terms of being just fully committed towards my future self and who I want to be, I think that the last time I was like full on committed, fully locked in, fully owning my future self and just with no fear or concern was when I was deeply blogging. And I was blogging and my blogs were read by over 100 million people, and it's what allowed me to become a professional writer. But you have to have a vision of your future self, and then you go through Dan's 4 C's: commitment, courage, build capabilities, build confidence. And then once you've got the confidence, you've essentially reached your future self and you've normalized it. There's a great book on the subject as well called Peaks and Valleys, that as you're going from peak to peak, you're going to end up going through some valleys, and the valleys are going to teach you the lessons that will be part of that iterative process where you're learning and ultimately becoming your future self. Once you get fully committed, once you're definite in your sense of purpose, as Napoleon Hill would say, you get fully definite, fully committed, then there's really nothing that can stop you. Then you're operating from the commitment, you're operating from the future, And that becomes more real to you than your present or your past. Then the future self wins the negotiation. The past self becomes filtered out because it's no longer relevant to who you are. You're also recognizing that you're no longer your past self. That's not who you are. That's not what you stand for. That's not what you value. But that doesn't mean you disrespect your past self. But this is the key, is the negotiation between your future self and your past self, and letting the future self own the ship. Living with intention, living with commitment, living with purpose, and then fully owning that purpose, reaching the point of no return. One of the things that I've found in my research, and this was consistent, is that I asked the question, once people had passed the point of no return, what was different? And a lot of times people would say that their confidence was sky high. One person mentioned that he was like Neo in the Matrix, where he could like dodge bullets. Because once you've passed the point of no return, then you're in full approach mode and you're no longer living in fear. You're living with commitment and courage, and all progress starts by telling the truth. Commitment is the doorway to change. Commitment leads you to becoming who you want to be. Commitment, then courage. This is the question. When was the last time you were fully committed towards your future self? You passed that point of no return, and that the future self won that negotiation, that the past self submitted to the future self, and that you submitted to the committing to your future self, and you stopped worrying about you stopped worrying about all the things you're going to have to stop doing, all the things you're going to have to let go. You stop worrying about what people think. You stop worrying about the repercussions. You stop worrying about failure. You go from avoid mode to approach mode, full approach mode. This is what I'm committing to. One of the ways you can do this is setting a commitment. Commitment is what leads to miracles. Commitment's what leads to surprising outcomes. And so it's very powerful to make a commitment, maybe a month-long commitment, a year-long commitment. One of the things that I'm committing to is publishing a video on this YouTube channel every single day for 12 months. That's gonna be very tough. I'm not gonna film a new video every day, but making that commitment over the next 12 months and living that out, I know is gonna transform my life. But there's other commitments you could make that are relevant to your future self, living as your future self, but making and keeping commitments is actually how you build integrity and confidence. Who's your future self? When are you gonna get fully committed? When are you gonna start living as your future self and stop worrying about all the trash? Once you get fully committed, then you apply a concept called strategic ignorance, or selective attention, where you focus your attention on what you want, on what you're becoming, on what you're creating, and you're willing to let go of all the distractions. There are a million distractions in this world. There's a million ways to get caught in the webs of mediocrity, the webs of just honestly lolling about and just not doing anything with your life. And until you get committed, you will be distracted. And so once you get committed, then there's that quote, once you make the decision, then the universe conspires to make it happen. Also, the definition of decision means you've cut off alternative options. It means you've cut off all the things in your life that are holding you back. You stop filling your mind with mud. You stop filling your mind with distraction, and you go all in on the commitment, and you let go of all the hidden commitments of your past self, all the distractions holding you back, and you stop worrying about what other people think. You start living your life for your purpose, for yourself, and for what intrinsically is motivating you to live. I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I invite you to get fully committed to your future self. Talk to you later.